All right.
What are you going to do? Okay, you ready? Are you ready this time?
I have been ready. Yep. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Roman Abramovich and Chelsea. It's going to be an interesting topic. It's a bit of current news that's come out over the last couple of days. Roman Abramovich wants to sell Chelsea. He's looking to sell, and the main buyers that have come forward are a consortium of billionaires, a Swiss billionaire and a US investor. And now Roman Abramovich has also said that all the processes he gets for the proceedings he gets from the sale of Chelsea will be donated to the war victims in Ukraine. Jackson, what do you think of this? What do you think? Smart move by Abramovich? What do you think Abramovich's aim is here? Do you reckon there's a driving force behind why he's selling the club, or what's going on? As a West Ham supporter, I want to hear your input first, your outsider input first.
We understand why he's going to sell the club. I mean, if he gets sanctioned, it's all over. He's not getting anything back from the club. And I think also there's a monetary loss that he would face if he doesn't sell now, but also I think Abramovich really does care about the club. He's probably one of the best owners any club in the Premier League has. He's very invested in the club personally. He's poured a lot of money into it, but he also is passionate about the project. And I think he knows that if he was sanctioned, he's not only going to lose a lot of money, but Chelsea are going to suffer on the pitch. Because you can imagine if his assets were frozen, what that could mean for Chelsea is people not getting paid. And when money freezes like that, it's going to affect events on the pitch. And Chelsea right now are in a tenuous position where they've got a couple games in hand, but if they don't do well, they can get dragged back into the top four race. And that would be a disaster for Chelsea, considering we were putting them as a title challenger early in the season. But I think for those reasons, Abramovich knows that he's going to sell now, but not necessarily for a fire sale price. I know he's already beaten back a 2.5 billion offer. So he's looking for some level of money. He's still trying to get something out of this sale.
I believe there was a news article I read earlier today around the 4 billion mark-ish that he's sort of looking to sell for. I mean, you look at the club, you look at his history of the club. He's owned Chelsea since 2003, 19 major trophies. And he said, and I quote, "I will not be asking for any loans to be repaid from the club. This has never been about business nor money for me. It's about pure passion of the game and club." So you can see how much of a football fan he is. He's not in it for the business. He's not in it for the money. He just really hopes that this Chelsea club as a whole will succeed. And he's been part of the Chelsea club for 19 odd years now. Like he's a big cornerstone into Chelsea's modern day history. Look at
absolutely. And I mean at the end, that 4 billion measure that you mentioned, that estimate is pre these events. He's been looking for that offer. He's beaten back offers in the past that weren't that high, but the moment the sanctions came in, there's no way he's going to get that amount, because people are going to know that's what he wants and knows they can lowball with the sanctions looming over his head. So I know that there were a bunch of names thrown out initially, and I know Wise was mentioned earlier, the Swiss investor, but I know Britain's richest man, Jim Ratcliffe, was also mentioned as a potential buyer for the club. I haven't heard anything about any Middle Eastern, oligarchs or countries sort of moving in, like Newcastle.
I have heard it's a little bit of a piss take, but I did see on Twitter the other day Conor McGregor said he was interested in looking at buying the club. Basically the club just hit him back, and they said, "Oh, if we want to hire an angrish or hot-headed Irishman, we just get Keane to run our club." And I thought that was pretty funny.
But that's just always rubbish. He wouldn't have the funds behind him to get it done.
No, even with his was it liquor business as well, and all the money he's made from fighting, it's still not enough to match some of these billionaires and investors here.
So a reasonable price is probably about 3 billion. I think what was initially, I know Wise was initially very cautious about it, because Abramovich has poured a lot of money into the club, a lot of loans that the club owes to him. And what Wise was concerned about earlier is that you might pay less for the club overall, but the deal would probably also include you recompensating
Exactly.
Abramovich for those. But if Abramovich is willing, Abramovich probably knows that that's not going to be something he can do, get away with. He needs to sell quickly. But if we're talking 2.5 and then another 2 billion on top, we're talking over the 4 billion estimate.
Exactly.
Like, it's just not, and I mean, people know that time, people who are interested in buying know that time is on their side. They just have to wait and he'll collapse a bit under the pressure, but you don't want to be last in line when he does, because you'll want to be the one putting in the first offer. But if it looks like this Wise Todd Bowley deal
consortium
is the likely one. It seems to be, the media is pretty confident that one is how that's going to go down, but it's still very suspicious.
They've both publicly come out and shown their interest as a consortium together of buying the club or purchasing the club off Abramovich. And like you said, I think there were some initial fears about, if we have to pay the debt, the debts back to Roman Abramovich. But now he's come out and said that he doesn't want any loans or any debts to be repaid. He just wants all the net profits to go to a charitable foundation that he's going to set up, and all those net profits are going to go to all the war victims in the Ukraine. I think, it is just a little bit of a time waiting game now, because, like you said, we all know what's going on with Russia and the world at the moment, and people getting sanctioned. Chris Bryant come out in the House of Commons and has said there's been speculations. He said in the House of Commons that, he thinks Abramovich is terrified he's going to be sanctioned, and that before that he was looking to sell Chelsea, he was already looking to sell some of his London-based properties as well. So there is this big fear of Abramovich being, well, am I going to get sanctioned? So time is very valuable on the side of the bidders as well, because like you said, if they can loom that out a bit longer, if they can stretch out that time span, then the price is just going to steadily decrease. And if you get in with a good offer, Abramovich is not going to have much time. He's just going to have to take what he's given.
And this is a very fast moving situation with the sanctions. He could be sanctioned any day. Like, it's not impossible that it could come very quickly for him. So this is a matter of days, not months, days, at most weeks. But I wouldn't even go weeks. I'd say he's going to try and get this done very quickly.
Oh, definitely.
It could happen. It's just too much of a risk.
It could happen tomorrow. It could happen next week, because like you mentioned, time is ticking on him. And I find it especially interesting, the timing that he announced he was going to sell the club right before Carabao Cup final match. That was very interesting in my opinion. I don't know if the news of Abramovich selling the club did have a slight effect on the team playing, or how their mentality was going into the game, how the coach's mentality was. I did see some post-match interviews where all the reporters wanted to do was hammer Tuchel about what's going on with Abramovich, all the stuff about the ownership. And Tuchel's like, well, look, I'm not a politician. I'm not going to speak about this. I'm not going to speak about what's going on, anything about Russia, anything about Ukraine. He goes, I'm here. I'm a manager. I'm managing this football team, and that's my focus. If you don't have any football questions, basically, don't ask them.
I do wonder. I mean, it's fair to say that, Tuchel did come out and say that the situation meant that Chelsea could, wouldn't be as hurt if they lost this game. Just the overall context overshadowed the game. Tuchel admitted that. But at the end of the day, they went toe to toe with a Liverpool team that is objectively better, and has been able to, where Chelsea and Man United have not been able to keep up their title ambitions, Liverpool has. So, compared to earlier in the season, like, the distance between Chelsea and Liverpool has expanded drastically, but they went toe to toe still. And it was, at the end of the day, probably Kepa, which cost Chelsea.
Look, at the end of the day, it was Kepa that cost Chelsea. They subbed him in for the penalties. Liverpool scored 11, Chelsea scored 10. Kepa skied his penalty. But we had no reason not to bring him in. Statistically, in shootouts, he's one of the better keepers in shootouts. We brought him in the last, 3 shootouts we've had, and he's pulled some good saves, and we've won the last 3 shootouts we've had. So I believe we won the last 3. So statistically, there was no reason not to bring him in.
Yeah, but he's this isn't the first
No.
This isn't the first Carabao Cup that he's cost you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, no, yeah. Back when we were playing Man City, I believe it was. He refused to come off with Sarri as the coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a good record from him. But we're getting slightly off track. We got to get back to the Abramovich situation, which is the core of this. Now, it's hard to say whether if new owners come in, it's still going to be a disruption. I mean, Chelsea are facing a really complicated time right now. You've got Aspi potentially going in the summer. You've got
Christensen potentially going.
Rudiger potentially.
Yeah.
It's
I know who's
situation.
going. Trust me.
It's rough. And new
going.
ownership coming in, potentially wanting to shuffle around positions, bring in their own people, maybe their own manager. It's a very complicated situation. And you know what? Everyone has seen that Chelsea has not matched their title ambitions, what they thought they could do. And you've got to think that even before this was happening, Chelsea looked like they were going to go backwards rather than forwards with the loss of those defenders, those key defenders who've been so important for them.
Look, with most of our goals this season have come from our defence. Like you look at Reece James. Reece James was firing. Ben Chilwell was firing. Alonso, when he had his time on the left wing as well, was firing as well. Mason Mount's been doing a little bit in the midfield, but our attack hasn't really lived up to its potential. I mean, we've got what $130 million in attack. Almost.
I think more than that.
Well, I'm just talking about Werner and Lukaku. We've got like $130 million of flops essentially.
Go even harder than that. I think that's 140 plus attacking players like Havertz, extra 75 million. Like,
see, the thing about Havertz is, I don't mind Havertz playing in an attacking role in, like, say, the striker position Lukaku plays in, because I don't know, for some reason Havertz in my opinion, plays better in that role there. Like he has more of an impact on the team when he plays there compared to Lukaku.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's still not great. Like, it's not an attack that's consistent enough, even with Havertz to go the length against Man City or Liverpool.
We've had attacking problems. I've said it all season. We've had attacking problems.
Yeah.
We've had Pulisic out for most of the season. I mean, he's come back and not been the best. Hudson-Odoi's inconsistent. Ziyech barely gets on. When he gets on, he's semi-consistent. Like he has his good days, his bad days. Mason Mount is everywhere. He could be left wing, right wing, could be in the midfield. They don't know where they're going to play. And then you've got Havertz, you've got Werner, and you've got Lukaku. And then how do you play all those guys together, or how do you find a combination of those guys? So I think we've talked about it before.
Yeah,
we've talked about their defense. Right now, their defense is solid. Like with Mendy, arguably the best keeper in the league. Thiago Silva, Rudiger. And it depends if they play wing backs or not. But their defense, if no injuries there, are set. Their midfield, if no injuries there, are set. Jorginho, Kovacic, Kante, like there's Saul. They've got players in the midfield. It's our attacking team that is letting us down.
Yeah, but that being said, so combine the problems you've had in attack, which clearly need to be remedied in the summer, and the massive problems with defense that will emerge when these players leave. This is an important summer for Chelsea. If they're going to match their ambitions, it has to be an important summer. But new ownership disrupts that. So we're going to see whether Chelsea are going to go out big in this summer with new owners or not, or whether it's going to be a much slower summer than it would have been under continued Abramovich ownership. Well, so it
will be interesting to see if Chelsea does bring back some of its loanees as well, like Conor Gallagher or Armando Broja.
It's impossible to. I think it has more to do with. I don't think Tuchel's the guy who's going to bring him in.
I don't think so, but it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see what they do with Broja, and Gallagher, considering how well they've been playing this season.
Notice as well, though, and I think this is an interesting point to make. New owners, I didn't think so. Here's the thing: Frank Lampard had his chance at management at Chelsea, and it didn't work, and he was burned by the club. Yeah, ruthlessly. Most people would
even a Chelsea legend, but when he comes into management, he was burned after he finished at the club.
But that was under the Abramovich ownership. New ownership might mean there's an opportunity for Frank Lampard to have a second go at that job. I think Under Abramovich
I
and
wouldn't
his
give it to
officials, there
him,
was no
though.
chance. But not now,
Not now.
but years from now. The fact is, if Abramovich continued to run the club, I don't think he would ever go back because
I wouldn't go back to
it was a
Lampard
rough
in that era.
experience. Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was a rough experience.
the most positive experience out of Lampard's tenure at Chelsea was the improvement of the youngsters, of the younger generation. And we did do an OT about this. If you're interested, go back and have a look at it. But Lampard did give majority of the youngsters that are in the Chelsea team or in top flight football now their chance at playing. So there was positives about him, but yeah, I believe Abramovich wouldn't have brought him back. But there could be possibilities with the new owners, but I don't think Chelsea fans would want to see as good of a legend Frank Lampard is back as a manager at Chelsea.
Yeah. All right, easy enough. I'm interested. We'll see. And there's a lot of ways different ownership can completely transform a club, and whether Chelsea can keep up their status as a Big Six club under new ownership will have to be wait and seen. Now, that being said, Matt, we're coming to the end of our time for this episode. So how about, Matt, you wrap up by giving us, okay, I want you to predict a day in the next few weeks and tell me what day is a sale going to go through.
Do you want like a date like numbers?
I want a date. I want you back to the wall, and I want you to throw out a prediction. Your last bullet, the last bullet in the chamber.
Let me think about the calendar now. So we're recording this on the 3rd of March at the moment. So I think if all goes to the train of thought that's in my head at the moment, I think between the 11th and the 12th of March.
I'll take that. That's
between the 11th and the 12th of March.
That's a big boy guess. I'll take that. That's gonna work.
I'm going off the time difference between here and the UK.
It is complicated. Yeah. Easy enough. So the 11th to the 12th of March.
What about yourself, Jackson?
It's harder for me to say. I'm not a Chelsea fan, so I don't have to make that kind of prediction.
Look, you're not a Chelsea fan, but you are talking about the biggest club in London.
That's just not true. It's Arsenal. It's always Arsenal. All right, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed. That's been it. Let us know. Hopefully Matt's prediction is correct. If not, let him know on our social medias. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify. Check us out wherever you need to find us, and let us know how we're going. So with that being said, we will see you all in the next episode. See ya.
Catch you, everyone.